Welcome to the Life as an Observer podcast. My name is Ryan Bean. I am your host in self-observation. This podcast is an exploration of physical and non-physical self through discussion around yoga, meditation, self-improvement, self-realization, and practices that elevate the mind-body-soul connection. Let's start observing. This episode of Life as an Observer is made possible by patron support. If you'd like to support this program, you can visit patron.podbean.com/lifeasanobserver to learn more. Welcome to the Life as an Observer podcast. I'm excited to chat with you today. I have kind of something that's been on my mind. I want to start today's podcast with just a quote from our friend Terrence McKenna. He said, "Psychedelics are illegal not because of loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally lay down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong." So this is kind of what I want to talk about today. But first, let me kind of get through some things that are happening in my world that you may be interested in. So yes, today we're going to talk about psychedelics. We're going to talk about ketamine. We're going to talk about psilocybin. We're going to talk about MDMA. And we'll just see where the conversation leads. It may go to some other areas. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some things that are happening in the world of life as an observer and maybe some things you might want to get involved in. So starting... I guess we've already been doing it for about a year, but we've been starting to do group ketamine breathwork sessions. So this is something that we hold the trademark on for ketamine breathwork. Really exciting that we're utilizing this oral version of ketamine. And again, we're going to talk about ketamine today in the body of the podcast. But if you've been interested or you're starting to think about, well, how and why and where and how do I do that? Well, right now we're traveling all over, but you know our clinic is in Utah, so we're doing groups that are in Salt Lake, St. George, and in Las Vegas. So I just want to tell you about some of those events, and it may be something that you're interested in doing. So we do have a Salt Lake City group that is scheduled up at Great Salt Lake Wellness, and it is in Davis County, up in Bountiful. We're doing that Saturday, January the 21st. So that's something you're interested in. I believe it's a 3 p.m. session, and you're welcome to come join that. When I talk about all these sessions, to book them, you just need to go to stgeorgeketamine.com, book your consultation. They'll get you the prescription sent, or you can pick it up maybe at a local pharmacy that you're aware of, or we just have it mailed to you. And then you can join the sessions. So we have that one starting on January the 21st. In addition to that, we've just started working with our friends at True North Float, and we're offering floating and then ketamine breathwork. So we're doing those usually on Fridays. You can do those whenever you'd like, but you just kind of contact our friends at truenorthfloat.com, and they will set you up for their next available date. It's myself guiding some of them, and also we have a whole team of people who have now been trained in this particular protocol that I created to be able to facilitate and administer this medicine to you. So that's something you're interested in. That's coming up. I also have several retreats. One that I'd like to chat about is in April. So I'm doing this one called Inspire Fest. You shall see that in the show notes. Inspire Fest is with my friend Jesse Coomer. And we're doing that in southern Utah at Homestead Ranch. Inspire Fest is a language of breath retreat, meaning I'm a co-host a co-founder of Language of Breath, and it is a kind of a breath that we've refined to make it accessible, to really kind of create more awareness, and to be kind of, I would like to say that it's a gentler approach to regulating the nervous system. I've just seen a lot of really bad breath work out there, and people that think you have to be crying and you have to be, totally traumatized to have good breath work. And Language of Breath, we don't believe that. I think that we can create exactly what you need neurologically and nervous system-wise without creating that trauma within you. So anyway, we're doing that here at Homestead. There is a link down below. It's an Eventbrite link, and it is April 28th. Jesse and I are doing that, and we're just calling it Inspire Fest, which I think is kind of an appropriate and kind of cool name, because we're there to inspire, like by breathing, but also inspire meaning, maybe you find something really amazing for your year and get inspired. So the other events that are happening, I told you we're doing a Las Vegas. We're actually doing it in Henderson at a place called Mystic Dreams, and I'll leave the links down below for this. But we're doing a ketamine breathwork February the 12th. And I'm also doing one in southern Utah with our friends at Flanagan's Resort in Springdale. Now, if you're not familiar with Springdale, it is where it's the gate of Zion National Park. So you're right there at Zion National Park, and it can be an overnighter. I say can be, it's not required, but you can come ahead of time and stay overnight at Flanagan's. Now, those who may be traveling from out of state or out of country, you can come early, get your consultation, and then go to Zion National Park, and you do this, but you need to call us soon. We would kind of advise you how to come into town, get your consultation, get your prescription, and then come to the event on February the 18th at Flanagan's. In addition to that, I've been doing monthly free integration calls. I'll put the link in the description, but free integration, regardless of what medicine you have taken, regardless of the ceremony or the healer or the shaman that's led you in it, but I'm offering free online Zoom integration, just some coaching to help you with that new information that you've received through your download, through your inspiration, through your feelings. And the next one is February the 24th. That's a Friday, and it's just a 1 hour long call. I do these, by appointment. If you want to do a one-on-one integration, happy to do that. But this is a group integration, and it'll be on Zoom. So that's enough with the announcements, I suppose. There's a lot of other things happening here within the state, but I want to jump right in to the body of what we're going to chat about today, and it is about psychedelics open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong. Now, I guess we have to do some history, right? We have to go back a ways to where there was a beginning of a psychedelic renaissance, right, where we had some options that were starting. We had from Albert Hofmann in his days at Santos and, creating LSD-20 and, his famous bicycle day. And, we can do that in another podcast, but essentially really came upon something pretty magical. He felt it was magical and knew that it was something about it. But again, it took years to really get into testing it and to really doing anything with it, at least as it relates to mental health. Now, there were some other leaders in that. I would say definitely Terence McKenna was one of them. Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert at Harvard with their studies, especially their good Friday experiments that had to do the stuff they were working with psilocybin and creating these, what they would call biblical or mystical experiences, and, asking those who were very biblical and mystical about them and finding that, yes, indeed, this was a biblical and mystical experience. And I think it was fine and dandy, and things were going well, including with the works that Stanislav Grof was doing in Maryland. And then something happened. And, I don't want to point fingers necessarily. It's not because I don't know. It's just because I don't really know that there was one specific event that caused our President Richard Nixon to essentially announce a war on drugs. And then that was carried over by our President Ronald Reagan saying, just say no. And this war on drugs continued from the late 70s into the 80s. Some people believe that it was the rogue personality of Timothy Leary. Some people believe it was the acid tests and the Grateful Dead that caused it to become more of a party rather than a therapeutic or a clinical tool. There's so many fingers we can point. Really, I think I'll share my personal opinion, and I think a lot of it had to do with fear. I don't know that it was one particular event. I think that it was they might open up. They might learn that everything they've been taught is wrong. They might learn that history is wrong. And so in a place of fear, the government acted and really made some of these medicines, plants, and fungi, Schedule I substances. And when we look at it in a very clever way, when we say, really, that's a Schedule I, it grows in the ground. It's in the same criteria as some other really harsh chemicals. And, for the most part, many of these psychedelics are from plants. Many. Not all, but many of them are. And they have some psychoactive properties that tend to connect us or tend to disconnect us completely to where we can see things more clearly. So ketamine in one is a dissociative, and it really disconnects us so that we can step away from what our emotions and our feelings are and really see things a little bit more clearly, where others connect us to the world and realize how important we are. Some are good for depression or anxiety, and lots of stresses. Some are really just good for us self-exploring, and others really, really good for PTSD. And whether you're, have any of these afflictions, or somebody who does, or you're just wanting to get to know who you really are, and maybe what your purpose in this life is, psychedelics may be an option for you under the right set and setting. Now, let me talk about set and setting first. So set really means mindset. And mindset means if you're going into it saying, I just want to get real high and disconnect, you're not going to get much out of this, okay? The set is hopefully something you prepare way ahead of time for. Hey, I've been called to this. I'm preparing. I'm doing things like meditation, and I'm preparing myself to learn more about myself and go beyond what Ram Dass would call channel 1, just a physical being, your personality. And go beyond channel 1, get maybe into the areas of the mental, but go way beyond, and maybe even go to channel 5. And this is like, we transcend and we believe that, nothing really matters. But even channel 4 is saying that we're all connected and we're the same. And if you're kind of exploring that as an option, you may find that psychedelics can help you get there. But we have to say which ones, because they're not all the same. And I hear this a lot, especially in the so-called healer world, that I laugh because so many people call themselves healers. And I think that I always go back to the Young Pueblo quote about how true power is knowing that we are our own healers, our own leaders, and our own heroes. So it kind of makes me laugh because we're simply guides to you being your own hero. But all psychedelics are not made equal. So I'm going to talk about, kind of just touch on a few of them. Maybe we'll end up going deeper. There's so many that we can explore. I don't think I'm going to really get into 5-MeO today, and a couple of things like ibogaine and whatnot. But there's a lot of them. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable. They certainly are. But just for sake of the time on this podcast, I'm going to talk about the ones that I find currently are in my experience and that I can talk openly and very educated about. Now, first of all, let's just talk about psilocybin. Psilocybin, magic mushrooms, whatever you like to call them. There are nearly 200 species of mushrooms that are naturally occurring that can offer a psychoactive experience. So it's really the psilocin that's in the psilocybin, how our body converts it. And there are all kinds of studies that have happened. I'll talk about a little bit of them, but these are part of the indodolamines family, which includes like LSD and DMT. And it crosses the brain-blood barrier and kind of advocates the serotonin, and it upticks in the 5-HT2A receptor. Okay, so essentially you're going to get a lot of serotonin. That's some people when they eat mushrooms, I can tell you, they kind of may have a sore jaw because they're kind of grinding their teeth, not necessarily grinding, but just kind of clenching, and that we believe that to be sort of from the serotonin. There's a lot of joy, a lot of laughter. Visualizations are certainly present depending on the dose and the strain. And there are trials that are happening all over through Johns Hopkins, through, I know, the University of Utah, through MAPS and so forth for depression, PTSD, OCD, Alzheimer's. The list goes on. I think even Parkinson's. There's a whole list of them. I remember I was reading article about the London Imperial College doing something that it showed the effects can even match that of some SSRIs. So if you're on an antidepressant or an anxiety medication, that psilocybin may be able to match that. And this is important because, well, psilocybin can maybe just be a one-time macro dose and feel pretty darn good for maybe even up to a year. Maybe a microdose where you have it on a protocol of, maybe the Stamets protocol where you have a couple days on, a couple days off, might be a good match for you. Or an SSRI, which is kind of a life sentence. You're on it for your entire life. This reuptake inhibitor kind of traps that molecule of serotonin, so you're getting a little bit more of it. And that's great and all, but if we go off of it, it really messes your hormones up and could potentially cause some serious damage mentally, physically. So you can't really come off SSRIs quick. You have to wean them. And there are protocols out there for that, especially if you are adding other chemicals that work on that 5-HT2A receptor. There are some of those. And so you want a good guide, someone who can understand that, and they can say, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm feeling. Again, we're not here to replace your doctor as guides, but if that's something you're wanting to get off of, there are options for you, and I advise you to talk to your doctor and find a good guide. I guess it should be part of this podcast is how to get a good guide, right? I'll get to that at the very end. So again, these grow all over. You can buy the spores online for medical research purposes. There are a few states that are offering decriminalization and legalizing it very soon, especially as it becomes FDA approved. I think we'll see more and more of those. There are some, including the state which I live in, organizations like the Divine Assembly, which is a church which offers ceremonies through its members, not through itself, but offers it as a church of mushrooms, and we can offer sacrament to our members, and it's usually done it has to be done in a safe setting, it has to be done in a ceremony, and it has to be done in that fashion and offered as sacrament to be able to do so. So none of this is recreational. I think I need to emphasize that none of this is recreational. Because you can get mushrooms or you can use them to help with a mental health condition, doesn't mean that you should be taking this and then going to a festival with them. Because that's not the setting that you would want. The mindset might be there, but the setting is not conducive to that. So it all goes back to the set and setting. And that's really going to be true for all of these chemicals that I talk about today. Whereas mushrooms may be really good, it's very associative, so you're going to feel everything, including maybe the earth breathing and the trees whistling, and there's a lot that can come from a really good facilitated mushroom ceremony. And many of these ceremonies that came into Maria Sabina is kind of responsible, I think, for that. Bless her for doing that, but bringing Westerners into that tradition as they would visit her in Mexico, and teaching them the sacredness of this medicine more than just how great it feels or the cool colors that you can see. Because it's not really about that. Sure, some of that comes, and maybe that has to do with the connectivity to the universe and the flow and the ebb and flows of everything and it being interconnected and woven. But really a lot of this, we don't know how it works. We don't know. I think that there are some hypotheses, but sometimes the medicine, because it is from nature, just knows what we need. Many would even say that the ayahuasca recipe came from nature itself, and that it was the medicine itself, or the nature, the tree, the vine itself, who said, mix me with this, and that's where I'll become potent. So psilocybin. Now, lots of trials out there. LSD, or lysergic acid, I don't know which came first or not, but derived from ergot, which is also a mushroom. And in 1938, that's when Albert Hofmann did that. The 5-HT2A receptor, again, it's a low toxicity, does not provoke addictions or withdrawals, really pretty darn safe, and that's why it was used In some of the early trials with Stanislav Grof, with Timothy Leary, with Ram Dass, lots of work was done around it because it was relatively safe, meaning in high dosages, in its pure form, safe. I think where this is me interjecting my opinion, but where the regulation came in is when we started to not have it in ceremony settings, when it became less clinical and people were drinking it out of punch bowls and they were in a bad setting and bad mindset probably. They're saying, I just need to do something, and they're going into it with a bad setting or bad mindset and a bad setting and creating what we call a bad trip. Bad trips happen two ways. One is going into it and you have fear and you don't know what's going on and you're not being guided, and coming out where you're saying, I'm connected to the whole universe here. I don't want to return back to that crappy physical body life. Both of them can be prevented with a proper guide. A proper guide can lead you to a better session and potentially removing the bad trip. There's so many instances of propaganda that happen specifically around LSD, how it would make you jump out of a building and make you crazy. And there was all kinds of nutty things that were being put out to the world in propaganda. And frankly, it was lies. We know them as being lies because now we're testing these things and seeing, no, actually it's quite therapeutic. And it was a fear-based reaction around them. So I'm leaving ketamine for last, by the way, if you're looking for that, just because that's what I'm most familiar with and that's what I work in at my clinic here in Southern Utah, Satori Health and Wellness. But I want to talk a little bit about MDMA. Okay, so this was, I'm saying this right, but it's an endotogen. Anyway, basically means touching within. Okay, that's what kind of medicine that it is. We learned about this in 1912. Now, this went by its street name ecstasy for a long time, and people were, again, bad setting. But for the most part, there's been a lot of good, street cred on MDMA. This is not a hallucinatory type psychedelic. It is not that at all. It can mimic LSD and the psilocybin's effects of depersonalization and this altered perception. This reuptake of serotonin and dopamines and oxytocin also happens, and MAPS is doing a lot of work around this. The Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies is doing a lot of work around PTSD testing, and I know that they're finding other ways to push this along, and it's in its final stages of clinical trials. Maybe even early this year we'll be able to see it in clinics used as a clinician tool, and I'm really excited that. But it's really been used for, a really long time. And we're just now saying, hey, maybe this can help. And I'm going to kind of input a little bit of thing about ketamine here, but MDMA may actually be the better tool for PTSD, whereas ketamine may be the better tool for suicide ideation, depression, and anxiety. MDMA may be the better tool for PTSD and relationship therapies. Because of that being that it's labeled as an endotogen, touching within, it's saying that it's sort of like this heartwarming connectedness to the world, connectedness to others. And it's been around since 1912. Lots of work's been done around it, and yet now, now we're just bringing it back from, its prohibitions and regulation states. So that's something I'm really looking forward to working with in our clinic and kind of being more connected to it. Now, DMT. DMT can be found in chacuna and ayahuasca and all the different areas. It's been used for thousands of years in Central and South America. It's found in plants, humans. They call it the spirit molecule. Again, it works on the same receptor, the 5-HT2A receptors. This one tends to be a pretty heavy lifter, though. DMT, some people really find it quite powerful, whether you smoke it, whether you're having it in the drink, with ayahuasca. But it tends to be quite a heavy lifter, kind of opening up realms of consciousness that we don't always have access to. And I can tell you from my own experiences, sometimes on a lower dose, it's just fractals and pretty lights. You feel kind of connected to other worldly things. Some people see spirit bodies, light bodies, alien bodies. Some people see spirit animals, and they're connected to the shadow sides of themselves and beyond, connected to nature. The reason why I bring DMT into this list is because a lot of people have said to me, should I take an ayahuasca journey? Should I pack up and move to Peru and, whatever, go to there for the weekend or the week and do this, or go down to South America somewhere, Mexico, to do this? And my immediate answer is, why? What are you looking for? What are you hoping to experience? Because, again, it's about set and setting. So if you're going down there, you're hoping that you're just going to find this inspiration that's going to change your life and repair your marriage and fix your job and fix your finances and help you connect to your family more, and you're just expecting this spirit molecule to do that, you're going to be in a bad mindset. And it's not worth flying thousands of miles for, sitting in a tent to throw up, to have an experience because you're forcing it. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be. It could be a great experience. But I would say, if you were asking me for advice, I would say give yourself lots of time to arrive and lots of time to leave. And what I've noticed, especially in a lot of these commercial psychedelic retreats, is there's no integration. It's like, thanks for coming to my show, goodbye. And that's because it's, it's very indigenous. It's very native to the people, and there's not an integration piece of that. Now, there are some out there that do. So those who are saying, I've had an integration when I went to this particular one. Well, yeah, they are out there. But that's not in every one. And integration, I think, is the key piece to any good psychedelic ceremony. Now, if you've never done integration or you're wondering what that word is, it's really just taking what we've learned and saying, now what? How do I apply, whether I've uncovered trauma, whether I'm adapting to knowing that I'm connected to everything and that I'm, God, myself? How do I incorporate that into my daily life to where I don't need the medicine anymore to help me feel good? That I can utilize tools and I can have groups and community to help support me in that. And that's why I offer the integration group. So like I said at the beginning, on February the 24th, we have that one. And whether you've experienced a ceremony with psilocybin, with LSD, with MDMA, with DMT, or 5-MeO, or whatever other chemicals you've experienced with Ibogaine, and you're looking for integration, you can come to these groups for free on Zoom, or you can contact me directly. I'll put it in the show notes there, but through my Instagram, Ryan Bean Yoga, and we can coordinate maybe even one-on-ones if you prefer to do those. So, and I'm going to move directly onto ketamine. That's what I know probably the most about. Ketamine, very interesting. So, 1962 was developed as an anesthetic, and it was developed for the military to kind of replace PCP in the war, in the Vietnam era war, and for an anesthetic, and worked really well for that. During that time, I think it was noted that it did have some psychedelic properties at higher dosages, and Spravato was developed in 2019. Spravato is a kind of commercialized brand name for ketamine, S-ketamine, and it is a nasal spray used for psychedelic integrated therapy. So it was developed and approved by the FDA for ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and that's what it's used for. So it works on the NMDA receptors on the glutamate system. So this makes it quite a bit different than the rest of them that we've talked about. The glutamate system is separate from the serotonin system. It doesn't have the same uptake of serotonin, whereas we may be finding, as we do more research, we may find that there is some of that. And I truly believe that there is maybe an uptick of activity on the endocannabinoid system also when ingesting ketamine. So there's a lot that can be done that does have a psychedelic experience, but you are sedated, meaning where you feel connected to the world on psilocybin and LSD. You want to roam and touch things and smell flowers. Well, ketamine wants you to stay quite still. Otherwise, you might get quite sick. So for us in our clinic, we have people seated in chairs with eye masks on and headphones. Again, it's all about set and setting, where there's beautiful scenery and comfort, and the music is ambient, and it's definitely about the setting. Ketamine, as it became legalized for therapeutic use, and we're doing it in an off-label fashion, meaning we're not doing it the nasal spray. We're using IVs. We're doing infusions, and we're doing intermuscular, and we're using these oral troches or lozenges primarily for the sessions, because we find that it works really well. It's pretty easily presentable. There's less anxiety when you're putting it just in your mouth rather than a needle. And maybe I'll put a link down below. We did a case study on why needle-free ketamine. Why what's the difference? So maybe I'll put that link down in the show notes. I got to write myself a note here to remember to do that. But yeah, put that in the show notes. So there is a lot of reasons to try ketamine. And I say try because usually this is not something you do forever. Whereas, if you're on an SSRI, it's forever. Ketamine might be a 3 to 4 session to where you stop seeing symptoms of suicide ideation. We know that within one session, most people will, at least for a week, it'll stop the suicide ideation, which is really great, especially if you're coming in and that's what you're suffering from. But usually 3 to 4 sessions is where we see the magic, and then usually the 5th and 6th session are self-exploratory, and they're still maybe working. I have done lots and lots of sessions, and I still like the self-exploration. So you may find that self-exploration is the reason why you continue to do it, to stay connected to the universe, to stay on top of inspired action, to draw things into your life that you're looking for answers on. There's literally hundreds of studies going on all these psychedelics, and I think ketamine right now is not as studied. So I'm trying to do my own studies, and that's why I created the ketamine breathwork, which has a little bit to do. I'll just kind of share parts of the theory on the protocol. Is that we're trying to create a sympathetic dominance so that the body can inhibit digestion, making the medicine more bioavailable, meaning a little hypoxia breath, a little faster breath. Medicine becomes more available, and then we move into a parasympathetic dominance so you feel relaxed and calm. There's intention setting that happens before all of this is going on. There's meditations during that support the intention, and then there's integration at the end. And we're seeing very positive results, and still looking to do a lot more studies. That's why we did the case study, so that we could maybe hopefully apply for grants, where we can see more with MRIs, and even doing more with just testing the blood suspension and just seeing kind of what's happening chemically as we utilize this chemical of ketamine. We're noticing a lot of changes in people's personalities, meaning where they were quite depressed or anxious, where they were withdrawn, maybe even finding that they were self-diagnosing themselves as treatment-resistant with depression, where they're becoming more social, less anxious, where they're those who are even coming in for pain, neurological pain disorders like chronic pain, are noticing that ketamine is helping with that. We're just seeing a lot of great results that can happen immediately. Happening immediately is really what's a bonus about ketamine, is because you can put someone on an SSRI and it may take months for them to come out of their suicide ideation. Well, usually you don't have that amount of time, right? You need to get right on it. You need to get right on it, and ketamine works immediately. It is a dissociative, meaning you're going to travel away from your body, at least in a way of perception and the perception of what realm you're in, move away from the personality and disrupt patterns. So the way we do this through the breath work is by moving us away from the prefrontal cortex thought patterns as it relates to this uptick of adrenaline and so forth with the breath. Because this sympathetic dominance kind of takes us into our prefrontal cortex saying, I'm in a fight or flight mode, what now? What did we do last time? Do that again. And what we want to do is disrupt that pattern and move more into the limbic side of the brain. And we're moving maybe into seeing more activity in the limbic mind for the fear response and in the hypothalamus, hippocampus, and seeing more activity there that is leading us more into the emotional side. Again, Dr. Joe talks a lot about this in his heart coherence talks, but we're seeing a lot of that where people are moving more into the emotional side of their being rather than thinking so hard. Again, we need lots more studies done. We need a lot more research, but we know that it's helping people to be able to live normal lives and to move beyond their self-diagnoses or maybe their diagnoses from their therapist or their doctor. We pair this with psychotherapy sometimes. We pair this, with in St. George here with floating ahead of time to get into parasympathetic dominance. We are pairing this with meditations and being outside. The ceremonies that I lead, we do them in safe settings in these big bell tents and kind of creating ceremony around this newer psychedelic, but utilizing the knowledge we know from indigenous peoples and native peoples that ceremony is really kind of the magic. Now, we do one-on-ones too. I mean, people may want their own privacy, or we do work with couples, but ketamine, we're noticing, is not the most popular psychedelic, but it is the only one that's currently legal everywhere. And that's why we're utilizing this as our tool in our clinic. So is ketamine right for you? Well, you would need to call and do a consultation to see if it is. The way you can find doctors all around you, but it is licensed by state. So you would have to see someone in the state in which you reside or travel to one of my retreats or to come to Utah for, a couple of days to be able to experience it here in Utah. And we could guide you on how to do that. There's a lot of great, I saw a lot of great YouTubers out there. What is it? Sky Cowan's had a really good one. And I reached out to her telling her she needs to come try our breath work because her video was great. It was a really great documentation of her journey, and I was just really stoked to hear about it. So if that's something you're interested in, I want to tell you about it. I'm going to link to the needle free down below and why. But let's talk about and finish today's session up about having a good guide and what we really feel like having a good guide means. Well, first of all, I would be weary of anybody who walks around calling themselves a shaman. I think that title gets thrown around too easily. And for most, it needs to be passed down by an elder to an elder to an elder or whatever. I don't think that it's something you can just take a course online and call yourself a shaman. I don't believe that. And, being a psychedelic guide or a trip sitter, therapist, those are all great titles. But I would say be weary of whatever someone's using a title rather than just saying what they're offering. For me, I'm director of ketamine breathwork, and that's what I do. There's ceremonies that happen around some of the other stuff we do, but I don't label myself as a healer. So be wary about that. I would also say look into the clinic itself. What makes a good guide is the clinic they work in. If it is a stark white place in a hospital, turn and run as fast as you can. I mean, those are great if you're there for BMed and you're it's a last result, you're being admitted, do that. But if you're looking for long-term relationships and people to support you through your process, you want to go somewhere where that feels safe. It feels like ease. It feels like a place you'd want to hang out and relax afterward, where you feel safe and taken care of. You can go into them before doing a consultation, check out their facility, look around, sit in the chair, talk to the therapist, ask them what their methods are. That's how I would do it. Finding a good guide is just see if you can connect with them on that level. I would also say with that good guide, someone that may challenge your belief systems is really a good thing. Many people come to me with their stories, and then they want me to recognize their old stories, which I can hear them, but I'm there to help them rewrite a new story. I'm not there to help them tell that old story over and over again and hope that something changes. I'm there to help them rewrite their story and get away from who they thought they were to who they're becoming. So someone who actually challenges you might be actually a really good thing and saying, okay, I know that you're not going to, let me just do my thing. Also, the innovation, I think, is an important thing in a good guide. Now, this is me tooting my own horn here, but like someone who's kind of progressing and saying, this is what we're doing, and this is our next step, and we're doing this thing with groups, and look what we're doing with breathwork, and maybe I'm giving away too much here, but finding a good guide is really about finding someone who's saying, I realize these medicines are really, really old, but we're creating a space that is different, that we're challenging that norm, not in a way to create, glitter or trinkets to our modality, but one that says we're going to make it better, like including integration. I guess that would be my next thing. My third item for finding a good guide is make sure they offer integration. If they don't offer integration, basically they're going to lead you through a psychedelic setting, say, go ahead and go home. And you're going to say, now what? What can I do now? I don't know. And if they don't offer integration, I would highly recommend that you look for someone else. And finally, the final piece to finding a good guide is someone who does their own work. If someone is offering you ketamine or psilocybin, MDMA, and they've never experienced it themselves, then they really are only very clinical and by the books, and really probably are not going to be able to offer you much insight, especially as it relates to comparing the different chemicals. So find someone who has experienced maybe all of them, many of them, and has a good resource for you on other chemicals. One that I'm not as experienced with is the abone, the ibogaine. Not as experienced with it, but I do know people who facilitate that, and I trust. And I could guide you in that right direction. So just someone who says, yeah, I understand this, because right now we're kind of working and we're playing with the government a little bit, what's legal and what's not. And obviously I'm not going to lead you to go, get DMT from, the guy around the corner. It's not legal. So we have to work and play within the structures which we've been given. However, there are, we'll call them loopholes, ways around getting you therapy that could be just as effective and still stay within legal structure and protect you and also create a good setting for you so that you could experience it and finish a therapy, maybe saving your life. Hopefully this information was helpful to you today. I definitely plan on exploring these chemicals a little bit more in depth in another episode. If it's something you're interested in, maybe I'll bring some experts on each one of them. We can talk about each one of them individually. If it's something you're interested in hearing more about, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You can always send me a message at Ryan Bean Yoga on Instagram, or you can respond. Our podcast currently doesn't have ads. I've been asked for ads a few times, and currently we don't. We support this by our patron group. So if you're interested, you can go to patron.podbean.com and /live as an observer. And there are ketamine breathwork recordings on there. So if you're interested, and with your session, it's at the $9 level, you can get the clinician level and experience those. So if you're a clinician, a therapist, and you want to offer ketamine, but you don't know how to offer guidance with breathwork and ketamine, I have recordings for you. You can use them. And I keep adding them. I also have a lot of other stuff on there. It starts as low as $2 a month, and as much as you find there's value, I would really appreciate that. It helps me to be able to travel, get guests on the show, and so forth. But yeah, I definitely plan on exploring more in this realm with breathwork and with different psychedelics this year. Thanks for a good couple of years. We've been going strong now. This is episode, I think, what are we on, 51 here? Maybe it's 52, I got to look. But we're definitely doing really well with having at least every couple of weeks we've had a couple episodes, and hopefully plan to amplify that as I have support financially and those guests who want to chat with me. So thanks for joining today. If you haven't yet, I was just on a podcast the other day with the 7 Elements of Wellness. I would love for you to listen to that. Go check them out. They're a great friend of the family here, 7 Elements of Wellness, and I did a podcast with them relating to breath work and to cold exposure and some other things. But it was a great episode. It's their latest one that just came out, and you can support our friends at 7 Elements of Wellness and hear a little bit from me. So thank you for joining today, friends. I look forward to seeing you or hearing from you very, very soon. See you in the next episode, friends.